Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future. Change the conversation, an unedited, honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, your host and futurist, and join me as I chat to my friend Pedram on self leadership, future, and peers. Besides our shared love for coffee, I got to know Pedram as a master trainer who equips trainers to increase impact and actually get the life they desire. He works with business owners to find clarity and focus for sustainable business that increases impact, influence, and income. Welcome, Pedram.
Thank you for having me on, Arjan. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I love your excitement. Um, and I hope we can keep that alive through the podcast. So I immediately actually want to start with a hard question. As a trainer of trainers, a coach to business owners, how do you value being coached yourself in your journey of self leadership?
Yeah, it's a good question and one which I think is important for anyone doing any work supporting others, because the way I see it is if I'm not willing to be coached and if I'm not aware of how I react when I'm being coached, then who am I to say that other people should be coached or mentored by me? And also, how effective would I actually even be if I don't walk the walk and talk the talk? And I know that over the years, I haven't been the best or easiest person to coach. So it's also I'm very mindful of how I show up as a coach and or a mentor. So those roles end up being blended quite a bit in the services that I offer. And it's one of those things that I just think is fundamentally important in the work that I do.
I just want to connect to what you said. Like, you haven't been easy to be coached. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What made it hard to coach you?
I yeah, it's another good question. I would put myself in the category of a know-it-all. Like I know. Yeah, of
Mm.
course I know that. I think of myself as intelligent, curious. I read a lot. I know a lot. And yet, it's not about knowing. It's about the application of that knowledge, and also use it the application of that knowledge in a skillful way. And there's a difference between knowing what to do and then doing it well. And so I would find myself earlier on in my journey as being yeah, I know I've got to do that, or and the reality was, then why aren't you doing it, or why aren't you uh, doing it consistently? And so
Mm.
having been there myself, I'm happy to work with people that might also have a very similar mindset.
Yeah, well, first thing that comes to mind, reflecting it on myself, is I work a lot with future perspective, um, finding it an enormous joy to help leaders to explore it. And of course, I'm my worst client myself in the same setting. And one of the things that always pops up with me as with others is that the I know it actually keeps you from not exploring your future perspective, because that is actually the unknown area of identity, dream, vision, calling. So, how do you put aside that habit of I know it all when you want to explore a space like your future perspective or like your unknown hidden self that actually is not served by that stance?
It's a good question. It is, and it's hard to create the space to do that in our modern world, right? Because there's so many distractions, there's so many things that call your attention, and especially when you're, and I'll speak for myself, running my own business and have a lot of different spinning plates to pay attention to. It's not always easy to say that to take the time to do that. Now, having said that, when I am when I do take downtime, I try and do it. There's two different. There's a structured way of doing it, and then there's also the unstructured way of doing it. So my structured way of doing it is this. I have like a productivity journal where there's a few different prompts that I have at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of each day, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and this gives me the time to just reflect on that there on a structured way. And there's other times, and more recently, just taking myself out of the day to day. I went away to Portugal for 6 days and having a different shift in perspective, dreaming with my wife. We were there. We are just looking at what was there and just dreaming what it could be, say, if we moved country. And even whether we move country or not, the act of dreaming and the process of asking what if and how could we do that, that allows for the parking of knowing. I know that's perhaps I've gone a little bit astray from the knowledge of I need to do this or do that to something that's a little bit more kind of essence based here, but it is something that I don't always do. And as you asked me that question, it just reminds me that I should do it more regularly.
And welcome back for part 2. I just find out that our recording crashed, so this is the first ever edited podcast to add part 2 connected to part 1. So, yeah, a fuse got blown, and by that, the internet connection was literally gone.
Things happen.
Things happen. So, last thing I remember, it's not that long ago, but I still have to I already answered your question, but I'll repeat that answer. And you mentioned about going to Portugal, setting time apart.
Yes.
And together with your wife, alone. I love that dynamic of not doing it on your own. You know, thinking needs to have a counterpartner in it. And I recently heard someone say, if you think on your own, it's just a collection of thoughts. You need others to think. And that reminds me what one of my sons says. It sounded better in my head. Then our reaction is, but now you've heard you say yourself talking about it, you actually get the answer what you're really thinking.
Yeah.
And setting time apart, what you said, I think if you add that to a daily practice of not just opening immediately the book of what needs to be done, that feels a bit like yesterday's list homework, but first focus 5 minutes, 50 minutes, just take the time apart and use your imagination, ask yourself the what if question, try to look from the other side to your horizon. Those practices, I think, really help to work on clarity, direction, focus towards the future. So I think, even when you say we did it nearly a week in Portugal, I think a powerful element of it is going to the other location.
Yes.
It is because that is fuel for your horizon. That's fuel for your imagination, and that's not in the book.
No, it's the novelty of it, right? And I'm sure there's other people can speak about the neuroscience much better than I can, but there's definitely something that happens that just triggers a whole bunch of neural synapses that go, "Ooh, what about that? And what about this?" And it's just you're in the context of change, and so it's just so much easier to dream something differently. And I love what you were just saying there about just being future focused and thinking about the what if questions. I do often think, what am I not seeing now that I would be able to see in the future if I look back this way? Or also, what might other people be seeing if they were looking at my situation that I can't right now? And those different shifts in perspective, it's in a way, it's a really great prompt and a reminder, Arjan, about needing to do that more regularly.
Yeah.
Because you can get so stuck in a rut. You see the same thing around you, and it's just like the same context. But in fact, shifting context doesn't necessarily have to be going somewhere else all the time. It can be a practice that you can do yourself anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, turn it around in your head and see what it looks like from the other side, your problem. Maybe it's not a problem, maybe it's an opportunity, or maybe it's not even part of tomorrow anymore. So you've saved yourself from solving the wrong problem and actually wasting your time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
another thing on that as well is uh, if I'm able to step back enough from a problem, especially one that's painful or annoying or frustrating, and just remind myself that this is going to be a story that I can tell in the future, that also helps me navigate through it with a bit more clarity and ease, because it's not a permanent problem. Things will shift, things do shift, and it's just a useful reminder when you're stuck to know that you're not always stuck. You have to get
Mm.
unstuck in some shape or form. Something will
Yeah.
unstick you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like those things that seem impossible, if you see them from the other side, they seem like just be a bump in the road.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in many cases, and I think even if you haven't practiced it, to just try to spin it around in your imagination, I think we all have that experience generally in life, that with hindsight we actually change the relationship we have with our history, our perceived history, and actually that reflection, I believe, is the most important step of learning. um yeah. Yeah, and just to connect it to what we started the conversation, your answer about if I want someone to be coached by me, I have to model to be coached.
Hmm.
I think that is a really powerful lesson in general, a leadership lesson. If you want people to follow you, you should model following. If you want people to learn from you, you should model learning from someone. And we tend to forget that. Um, and we can just guess what the reason is. I think the most important reason is that we are afraid for something,
Hmm.
and we don't open up and we don't show our vulnerability. So we actually not contribute out of our authenticity, and we actually shortcut our own value in a negative way. So if you want to help someone as a coach to find the real version of themselves or the fullest version of yourself, then we should open up and show what that looks like in our own journey, in our process.
Yeah, there was something that I can't remember where I heard it first, but it's a common sentiment. You can't expect anyone to go deeper or further than you've gone yourself, and that's the same with the when it comes to coaching or when it comes to advice giving. If you've not been there yourself, and even if somebody else's context is a little bit different, there is that sense of how much of my onion have I peeled back, or how much have I allowed myself to question something and to navigate something. If I haven't done that myself, then the impact that I will have is limited, because I won't be able to take somebody that far. So we're always limited. I'm sure that I know that there's still further that I can go myself,
Yeah,
and it's about just peeling back that onion
yeah,
before
yeah.
we expect anybody else to peel back their own onion.
I think this is a really valuable perspective of, um, don't expect someone to go deeper than you've gone yourself. We know the other version of it, which I think is equally true, is that as a coach, you can't go further than your coachee wants to go. You know, that's that has the same truth in it. But this one you mentioned, I think is vital. If you
Yeah.
really want to stand alongside someone and you want to not just show sympathy but be real, I think this is a really good check, like a
Yeah.
pulse check for yourself.
The other thing, I see the symbiosis there, but one thing I would add to it is it's about when your coachee knows, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, that you've gone somewhere, it gives them permission to go there as well. I was having a kind of a wrap up offboarding call with a client at the end of last week, and they were saying something similar. I've seen the way you show up. I've seen what you've done. I've heard your examples and stories around what you've done, how you build in the open, all these different things. And she said that gave me permission, and continues to give me permission to do that myself.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just thinking of some campaign I'm putting together to get some more traction around my coaching offers, and one of them is like prioritize, permission. I ended up with only P's. I don't know why. It's
I
maybe
love it.
that's a system thinker, but it was like aware of your position, give it priority, give yourself permission, perspective. And many, but that I will go after the podcast immediately through that set. Like,
I love that.
do I ask my potential client to do something that I haven't modeled myself? And because then I'm actually not giving them permission while asking them to give themselves permission. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, at least I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good. I agree with you.
So just to wrap it up, I just want to thank you for some gemstones no longer hidden. So I really appreciated the time spending together on the podcast, part 1 and 2. And I just want to invite those who are listening and see themselves as leaders, which starts with leading yourself. So you already have one follower, so you were a leader, and to just reach out and just take it to the next insight, what it could mean for you, your desires, your future perspective, to have a coach to just accelerate you. So just reach out. In the bio, the description of the podcast, we have the link, businessrevivalists.com/coach. Just use it, reach out, no strings attached, just finding out where you could be accelerated for your future. And to you, Pedram, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
I'll definitely try to get my technology back in order when I invite you again to join the podcast, because I loved your insights. And now,
I love your questions. Thank you.
take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Cheers.